Ugh. So last week it was announced that 2 animated Disney films were about to get new sequels. Zootopia 2, which I'm surprised wasn't announced sooner, and Frozen 3, which the fact that they are announcing this 4 years after the release of Frozen 2 at least tells me it won't be a rushed debacle like Frozen 2. At the same time, however, a Pixar sequel was also announced that sounds less like a real project and more like one of those theater signs you see in the background of a Simpsons episode, Toy Story 5. Like, why? The third one was, but then the fourth one was, just, why?
Because I don't like you.
Is it just a simple case of Disney demanding that Pixar make more Toy Story films, since number 4 was one of the few animated films to ever hit $1 billion at the box office? A likely scenario, though Pixar is usually stronger in their stance than that. If anything, the fact that Pixar attempted something like Lightyear before being forced to churn out a Toy Story 5 is pretty ballsy. Like, you wanted more Toy Story films, but instead of trying to force out a 5th movie like any moron of a studio would, we're going to try something risky and creative. Oh, well, that bombed, even on Disney+, so shrug. Toy Story 5. I mean, let's face it, Disney's not exactly above churning out forced sequels just to turn a profit, though Pixar kind of is. Like, even though Cars 2 was kind of lame and unnecessary, the film was based on Lasseter's trip around the world promoting the first movie and his love for spy movies. So, as bad as the film was, the corporate demand wasn't the only influence in play, and the rest of Pixar's sequels were warranted to a point where fans were demanding an Incredibles 2 from the moment the first movie wrapped up. And, they all took a reasonable amount of time to come up with a stellar premise for each of them. With Toy Story 4, for instance, I feel like 9 years after the third movie was a reasonable length of time for them to write something stellar, which they did. But announcing this 4 years after the last movie? I don't know, the length of time in between sequels is getting suspiciously smaller now. To be fair though, it is kind of a miracle that we've managed to make it to number 4 without feeling like the franchise is running on fumes. I mean, Cars couldn't even make it 2 films without running out of gas, so 3 wasn't bad. And yet Toy Story has made 4 films without feeling forced. Like 1 through 3 ranks up with Star Wars and Lord of the Rings as one of the great 3-movie story arcs, and then they managed to find a gold nugget of storytelling to make the focus of number 4. Maybe they managed to find another nugget that we're just not yet aware of. I mean, I never expected Finding Nemo to have a decent follow-up, and they managed to pull that off pretty well. But, I mean, where could the story go from here? Does Buzz have anywhere else to go in his arc? I don't think so. If anything, his arc racked up pretty good in the first movie, and he mostly just served as momentum for the rest of the characters for the other films, and since Woody and Buzz were the main characters of the first movie and both wrapped up their arcs pretty well, I couldn't really say where this could go. But I suppose just because I can't think of anywhere for the story to go, that doesn't mean there aren't any directions it could go. Honestly, the only time I really feel like sequels are forced are when either the main character or the main threat are killed off and they still manage to get sequels produced. Halloween 2018, for instance, was originally just supposed to be one movie, and you could clearly see that with the way that it ended, but it became such a hit that the studio demanded it become a trilogy. And the way they work around that in the second movie is kind of ridiculous in my opinion. And if you see the end of Halloween Ends, you know how baffled and frustrated I would be if they announced a 4th movie, but I digress. With any franchise, there's a galaxy of directions one could take, whether crazy or otherwise. I mean, Jason Voorhees went to space for crying out loud. And part of the beauty of Pixar is that they generally do a great job of taking whatever crazy idea they have, or in some cases whatever idea someone else had, and adding some emotional resonance to it to allow audiences to connect to it and be satisfied with the experience, as long as it's not puberty. I mean, just because Woody, Buzz, and the other characters finish whatever emotional journey they were on before doesn't mean that they can't start another one. That's the domino effect of life. One event happens that wraps up a previously transcending event, and that event becomes the start of a new event. Like, again, just spitballing here, have you ever considered the fact that Woody, previously the leader of all these toys, has departed from the clan? Who's gonna lead the toys now? Buzz? What kind of effect would that have on the group? Does he connect with the toys on an emotional level like Woody did? I mean, they knew Woody long before Buzz, and part of the toys' fascination with Buzz was more along the lines of the awe of how advanced and cool of a toy he was, more so than an emotional connection. And even though Buzz has been with the gang for the while, there's still the history that the other toys had with Woody that becomes missing now that he's off on his own journey with Bo. And Buzz, being the new leader, if they choose to take that direction, would have to help the toys cope with that emotional feeling while coping with it himself, once again bringing back that dual character arc that made the first movie so brilliant in the first place, alongside, I'll just be honest, giving Buzz some emotional resonance for the first time since the first movie. That's just me spitballing. Who knows what the brilliant writers at Pixar who made freaking Bright into a tearjerker could come up with. Now, am I saying that the announcement of this wasn't just an economical push from Disney to grab some extra cash even though they've been doing virtually nothing but cash grabs? No, their reputation hasn't exactly proven them being in the market for anything other than nickels and dimes, but what I am saying is that no franchise is devoid of possibilities for continuation, and Pixar can still work their magic and make this work. Doesn't mean that it will, but they can. They did that with Finding Nemo, they did that with Toy Story, and they can do that with, well, Toy Story again. So as frustrating as it is that Disney continues to release sequels, remakes, and reboots rather than come up with risky content all the time, my suggestion is don't fret about the snake in your boot until it bites.